Hello and welcome to A Bettor Morning, presented by Rival Fantasy. I'm Heather Klein. Rival Fantasy is the all-in-one fantasy sports platform. Let's welcome today's panel. Award-winning host, the fantasy exec, Corey Parson. Senior Manager of Content for Fantasy Alarm and host of the Quick Out Fantasy Football Show and Fantasy Alarm DFS shows, Jon Impemba. Welcome, everybody.
How we doing this morning, Corey?
What's the deal, John? What's going on, Heather? Hope everybody is doing well. Good old Tuesday morning. I don't know about everybody else. It's supposed to reach 115 degrees where I'm at today, so I'm looking forward to that.
It is pouring all day here in Massachusetts. It's raining right now. It's going to rain all day. So that's where I'm at.
We had tornado warnings and everything and flash flood warnings yesterday. So I guess that's what you're getting, Jon, today.
Yeah, moving up the East Coast. So that's what we got.
Right, exactly. All right, well, let's get to it. It's finally here, and the running back free agency for two veterans has ended. Let's go with the first, Ezekiel Elliott to the New England Patriots, and with a whole new do. Zeke can earn up to $6 million with incentives with his one-year deal with the Pats. Let's talk fantasy. Jon, do you see his draft capital rising with the Pats? And do you think he's a good fit for the six-time Super Bowl champs?
Yeah, I think you'll see his ADP start to rise a little bit now that people know where he landed. I don't think anybody ever was drafting Ezekiel Elliott with the expectation he was going to go in and be someone's lead back right away. He was just lingering around free agency far too long. The teams that he was visiting, there were obviously clear RB1s ahead of him. But New England is not a bad spot because there isn't really a clear number two that was behind Ramondre Stevenson after they let Damian Harris go. You were looking at Kevin Harris. You were looking at Pierre Strong Jr., two guys that were drafted last year in the middle and later rounds of the NFL draft. So bringing Elliott in now kind of replaces that spot that Damian Harris vacated when he went to Buffalo. And, of course, Elliott has a really good history of being a pretty good short yardage, pretty good red zone, and a guy that can help out in pass protection for New England. So you could see a scenario where Ramondre Stevenson's getting some of that early down work, and Elliott spells him and gets more of the short yardage and red zone work for the Patriots there. So maybe some touchdown upside for him, much in the way he played for the Dallas Cowboys in his role with Tony Pollard last year.
Yeah, I would agree with Jon. I think that's the best way that you look at it. Now, as far as fantasy-wise, right, okay, well, his ADP is going to go up because his ADP is off the board right now. So now that he has a team, he comes on the board. He's a late-round draft pick, a guy that has some touchdown upside, maybe I would say maybe an RB3, RB4 with touchdown upside. Nothing really much that Ezekiel Elliott is going to give the team, you know what I'm saying, outside of, some good goal line work, some good short yardage. He'll be a presence in the locker room, what that is, and he has been that in Dallas. So it's good to see Zeke get his chance, get his opportunity, you know what I'm saying? Hopefully he's not as lucky as DeMarcus Ware, where he goes somewhere and immediately win the Super Bowl. I doubt that happens this year in a very tough AFC. With that being said, I think it's, listen, we've seen this type of stuff all work for New England before, and it's good to see Zeke move on and, get his flowers somewhere else before he wraps it up and calls it a career. Now, here's the deal. All this talk about the running backs living in poverty. So Ezekiel Elliott, the old man, is more than likely going to make more money than Miles Sanders this year. So I don't really see where the running back market is really that far off.
Yeah, I know this contract for him is pretty incentive laden. Usually it's got like a show game day active bonuses attached to it from things that I've read, so he can earn up to the $6 million. But it feels like Elliott's on this team to play every week. So like you mentioned, probably hard to envision him not getting the full $6 million out of this deal here. He's a pretty good handcuff in fantasy if you're looking for someone to go behind Ramondre Stevenson. Again, it looked like Elliott maybe didn't have a lot left at the end of last year. He's had to go through a couple of knee injuries over the last couple of seasons as well, maybe slowing him down. The offensive line in New England did not look very good during the preseason. Maybe that can get better when they get Cole Strange back. They get their left tackle back there as well. Some better offensive line play as they get healthier. Maybe Elliott will look at that running back group can look a little better behind it. So I'm still willing to take stabs in Elliott late in drafts for sure.
You know, John, one of the things he does is he always starts the season slow. He's kind of like Shaq. He got to play himself into shape. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But now, as you see his touches and carries get lower, it takes him longer to play himself into shape.
Right.
So that's going to be problematic. He will definitely get off to a slow start. Put it like this. If you draft Ezekiel Elliott, by week 2 or 3, you might be sending him to the waiver wire.
Sure.
All right, now let's move over to the next signing of the day. Former Viking Dalvin Cook joins Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. He signed a 1-year deal as well for $8.6 million. With the addition of Dalvin Cook, where does this leave the fantasy football draft value of Breece Hall? And what are your expectations of Cook this season? Corey, you're up first.
Oh, hey, Britt.
Y'all just didn't want me to talk about Zeke. I know that's what's going on.
We had the Cowboys fan off for the Zeke signing, you know.
I know. Sorry, Britt.
So, Dalvin Cook, $8.6 million. Once Aaron Rodgers turned that money down and told him to go get Dalvin Cook, kind of figured that was going to be the case because nobody else was really going to give him this $8.6 million. The Jets had it because of the kindness of Aaron Rodgers, so you get a chance to go out there and get it. Breece Hall really throws him into a loop, his fantasy value. This right here, mixed in with the injury, really makes him more than a bench asset, and you'll see him start to drop. Now, what I think is going to be interesting is going to be where's the value of Dalvin Cook. I'm in the flex league draft right now, and, he has, after his signing, we've been drafting, and he is not going off the board yet. So we've already seen guys like Mixon and Kenneth Walker Jr. go off the board since Ezekiel Elliott reached that agreement. What I find is going to be interesting, maybe this is something we can discuss when we get into the all hands on deck portion of it. Is Dalvin Cook a better fantasy draft pick this year than his brother James Cook? I think that's a very interesting conversation. As of right now, I think it's too close to call.
Yeah, I think that this trade or signing, not trade, but it puts them both like in low end RB2 range. We've seen people when they come back from ACLs, running backs especially, that their efficiency is way, way down for that first year after they come back. So the Jets might just be signing Dalvin Cook to put him in a bigger workload situation in order to preserve their future, who is Breece Hall. If they can get a championship or even make the playoffs with Dalvin Cook, that will be worth that signing. And then in the long run, that's what they're doing with this franchise. They brought in Aaron Rodgers. They brought in all of his buddies, his cronies, even Randall Cobb. And now they're bringing in some more backup support because I think that they're really making a push and putting all of their chips in this year. I think that Dalvin Cook ends up having a better season than Breece Hall just because I do expect the Jets to limit his workload somewhat. But I think that they can both be low-end RB2s at the end of this year.
Yeah, listen, I have Dalvin Cook as my highest drafted running back in Underdog Fantasy, so I feel like this is a pretty good landing spot for me. Listen, not everybody's Adrian Peterson. They don't just come back from torn ACLs and be basically league MVPs essentially. So in the fact that they started Breece Hall on the PUP list, there's a lot of reporting out there. Oh, they're hopeful he'll be ready to go for week 1, but clearly this is a scenario where they have Aaron Rodgers. They know their window is limited, and they're out there to bring in the talent that they possibly can. We saw, what Tampa Bay did when Tom Brady went down there. They brought in him Leonard Fournette. They give him a legitimate, heavy-duty back that can carry the workload. You saw what Fournette was able to do for that team during that Super Bowl run. We'll see if Dalvin Cook can kind of do the same thing for the Jets here, and I do like his fantasy prospects in that offense. The only downside is it's a really tough division and tough schedule for the AFC East this year. They face the AFC East teams. They got to face the NFC East teams, and they're those defenses. I think they're out in the AFC West this year as well. So just some tough go for that, for potentially for that matchup for him.
Yeah, that's why I have him as a low-end RB2. I think that the schedule is very daunting. So not only are we worried about Hall coming in and kind of it being a split backfield, but those defenses, whew.
Yeah. Tough to run against all of them. So it's going to be, tough sledding for sure.
But to Corey's point, right now where you can get Dalvin Cook in drafts, I mean, I would take him over James Cook. Like that ADP value is crazy. But we're going to have to see how much it shifts and how much it rises now that he's actually signed with a team. And that could kind of affect the value.
Yeah, I was getting him more into the downswing when he got released and nobody knew where he was going. His ADP started really falling. I was just scooping up shares because you're taking him as your RB3, RB4 in some of these drafts, and now he's in a spot where he's a lead back. He's not like Ezekiel Elliott, who's going to be a backup. To Corey's ask about James Cook, though, I'm actually a big fan of his as well, just where he's going in drafts. I think there's a really good opportunity for him to take on a lot of the workload that we saw Devin Singletary have. He's a big play guy. I know there's been some people out on the Twitter sphere that talk about Josh Allen not really throwing to the running back much, but you give James Cook a full snap share this year, you got to think he's going to at least be able to repeat what we got out of Singletary catching the football last year, and he was third in most routes run as a running back last season. So I'm excited for the prospects of seeing what Cook can do as an every down back.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of this is about the thing with Cook is about taking some of that responsibility away from Josh Allen. Like I mentioned, you know what I'm saying? He's an AFC Dak Prescott. He's a turnover machine. So running the football is something that could help him. And I do know that he likes – but listen, I think you have to use Cook out the backfield because he's too dynamic. Anytime you get up there and on that 8-9 yards of reception, that's Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey-esque. So I think you have to – listen, I think talent finds a way on the field. I think it's tough. I probably right now – oh, man, I think it's tough. It's real tough.
Yeah, that's another thing about people living in the past and looking at last year's stats. The Bills' offense is going to look entirely different. I think they're going to run a lot more 12 personnel. This situation isn't going to be the same as last season. So people have to think about that too.
I agree.
We're here to get you ready for your fantasy football draft. Start a 7-day trial of Fantasy Alarms, all-pro subscription, and get the fantasy football draft guide and cheat sheet free. Go to fantasyalarm.com/draft. All right, let's move over to the NBA. Although the Philadelphia 76ers announced that after the failure to reach a trade agreement, James Harden is to remain a Sixer. The All-Star guard, though, has a difference of opinion. At an Adidas press event in China, Harden declared his true feelings about his partnership with his current team and said, "Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be part of an organization that he's a part of." Let me say that again. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of. What are your thoughts on James Harden's declaration, and do you expect him to be on the court at Wells Fargo Arena come the start of the season? Britt, you're up first.
Yeah, I really don't. This is such a bad situation for both sides, and it's something that we've seen before with this particular organization. When Ben Simmons had his contract dispute, it drug on forever until the 76ers finally gave in and got it done. The thing about that, though, is that I don't remember that situation being publicly messy. This is publicly messy already. The 76ers aren't an organization that fear being bullied into a trade. And until somebody offers something that they feel is acceptable, they're not going to bend to Harden's demands. And as a player, I also feel the frustration with what's going on. Harden was more or less promised a long-term extension, and then Morey went back on his word. And as long as these two have worked together, this is going to play out like a bad divorce.
Yeah, I don't really see this much as an organizational issue as I do a player issue in the NBA. I feel like the players have just too much power and influence when it comes to the NBA and where they demand, where they feel like they have the right to demand some of these things. A lot of these players are under contract and then just will hold out. You see the Damian Lillard situation. We've seen Ben Simmons was calling injury and then calling mental health and all these things to force his way out of Philadelphia because of what happened at the end of the playoffs a few years back. James Harden might be one of the more toxic players in the league, given the way he's exited situations and teams that he played before, wearing the quote unquote fat suit to get himself out of Houston, going to Brooklyn, having it end there and getting traded over to Philadelphia, now finding himself in a spot in Philadelphia where it did not work out. A lot of people have kind of considered him more robust with that team than anything else. And now he is once again trying to force a hand, to force a trade out of a situation because he thinks that he can go elsewhere and be better off. I think this is a league problem where they've given the players too much power personally. And I would much rather just see Harden play some basketball and do that, what is something he's actually good at, instead of cause drama in the league.
In James Harden's career, he's made over $300 million. The majority of that comes from organizations that Daryl Morey has worked with before. So these two right here, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out because I don't think that Daryl Morey and James Harden are really going to be enemies all the way. This is the problem. At the end of that 21-22 season, Harden opted out, and that allowed the 76ers to go sign P.J. Tucker. And Morey made a promise, never make a promise to a player of money that does not belong to you, that he was going to get Harden right. You come into this offseason, Harden opts in, right? So the first thing the organization say, okay, we got to trade him. It feels like the Clippers are a place that James wanted to go. And listen, a package of some picks with Terrence Mann and Norman Powell should be good enough to get James Harden to the Clippers, but I don't think the Clippers wanted to pay that money either. So now it's back to Philadelphia because guess what, Daryl Morey, you owe me. And Daryl Morey probably said, I can't do it. And now James Harden is like, that's ridiculous. Here's the problem. Why James Harden is not worth $40 million a year no more. This guy is not the player he was a decade ago. So you can't give him that kind of money and blow up your salary cap. But let me tell you something else. You also can't let James Harden rip apart your organization because he's very good at doing that. This is not Oklahoma City. This is not the Houston Rockets. This is not the Brooklyn Nets. This is the Philadelphia 76er, a legacy franchise in this league with a new head coach, with a team that could very well win the Eastern Conference. They have to get this done because James Harden will burn this joint to the ground if they don't. So guess what? There's going to be some kissing and making up, and James Harden will be a 76er.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know where he would go. Like you mentioned, you said the Clippers, but they have Russell Westbrook there already. So like, unless they find themselves moving on from Westbrook, I can't find a scenario where Westbrook Harden plays together with George and Kawhi whenever those two decide to take the floor either. Maybe Philadelphia is the best place for them to sit down, but so far that hasn't worked with Embiid sitting there, and really anybody that they've put in with Embiid, they've had a tough time getting through the East when it comes to the playoffs. So,
that's a lot, in my opinion. That's a lot of Embiid not being in shape. As this
he was in the best shape of his career this last year, and then he died off in the playoffs.
Yeah. And throughout the course of this process, you've seen Embiid as a loser. You've seen him as a guy who's grown into a winner. Now you see him as a guy who can't get his health and his weight together. That's a problem for him. Now, here's the deal, right? I got 2 baby mamas. You know how you fix problems? With money. So there you go right there. The Morey and the 76ers get him the money he wants, everybody will be friends.
Right.
But it comes back to what you said in your one-on-one, Corey. He's not worth $40 million anymore.
He's not, but
so how much is he willing to take a pay cut? Where is that line going to be drawn in the sand? And when is one party or the other going to cross that line? That's where it gets really interesting.
Because I think when you bring a new head coach in, you don't want fat suit James Harden. You know what I'm saying? Right. You don't want that dude out there, especially with a team that you think can win a championship. So I think they're going to have to cave to him. Listen, Silver sent the memo when Damian Lillard said Miami and only Miami. He sent a memo about James Harden saying the Clippers and only the Clippers because you can't run. None of that is collectively bargained. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, they need to get in here and stop this foolishness from going on. You can't this is not how collective bargaining agreements and contracts work. You can't do this, but I think James Harden has a lot of leverage right now. And the fact that he did it in China, and we know the problems that Daryl Morey has had in China is unbelievable. He doubled down, he said it twice, and then he went out to do his Adidas work. And I'm pretty sure he get a pretty penny from Adidas as well. Yeah. James Harden is not broke like the running backs. $300 million in his career. Can you imagine that?
Rival Fantasy is the all-in-one fantasy sports platform. Play challenges, fantasy book, fantasy bingo, plus season-long fantasy football. New users who sign up at Rival Fantasy get up to a $200 deposit match and a complimentary first play voucher. Go to joinrival.com/alarm. Today, we're going to play the challenges game where two players go head to head, and you choose which guy will score more fantasy points. Jon, let's see who you got.
Yeah, let's show my screen here. First matchup they tossed to us here on the challenges game. They gave us Graham Ashcraft going up against the Cleveland Guardians, Michael Waka going up against the Baltimore Orioles. Here we have Michael Waka making his first start coming off of the injured list against an Orioles team that came through last night. Graham Ashcraft going up against a very bad Cleveland Guardians offense, but Ashcraft himself, not a very good pitcher, and I don't really want to trust Waka coming off of the IL. So we'll skip this challenge here and see if we can get a better pairing duo here. We got Logan Allen going up against the Reds and Lucas Giolito going up against the Rangers. Giolito is going to get absolutely smashed in this matchup here. But again, Logan Allen, not really a great starting pitcher, so I feel a little risky picking him. Let's see if we can get a better matchup against Giolito, because I would love to go against that one. Elder against the Yankees. No, we're going to skip that one too. Christian Javier against the Miami Marlins versus Yusei Kikuchi going up against the Pirates. We'll play this one. I'm going to go with Yusei Kikuchi here. He's been on a really strong run of games. It's like 4 straight games where he's given up no more than 2 earned runs. The Pirates here, well, a scrappy team of late. They've really called up a bunch of their younger players to put into that lineup. You have guys on that roster, veterans like Brian Hayes and Brian Reynolds, starting to hit the ball a little bit better. I think Kikuchi is just a better player against that lineup. So we'll run Kikuchi here going up against Christian Javier, who's really having more of a down season this year than in years past. His strikeout numbers are way down. And the Miami Marlins, believe it or not, are just one of the better hitting teams in baseball this season overall. It's one of the reasons they find themselves in playoff contention this year, is that offense has surprised a lot of people. They added Josh Bell at the trade deadline, and he has as many home runs basically as he's had when he was with the Guardians. Now that he's with the Marlins, he's been unbelievable for them here. So we'll run Kikuchi here going up against the Pirates over Christian Javier going up against the Miami Marlins, and we'll lock that in as our challenges play of the day for Rivals Fantasy.
Very nice. The Cleveland Guardians.
Yes.
Thanks, Jon.
Freddie Freeman popped up there. I want to know what's going on with him.
Yeah, Freeman going up against the Brewers is a decent matchup for him as well. But he's again one of the contenders for the National League MVP right now is Freddie Freeman. But Ronald Acuna is such a big favorite right now to win the National League MVP that if you go to DraftKings Sportsbook, they actually give you a bet of Ronald Acuna versus the field. You can get the field at plus 400. You can get Acuna at minus 650 to win the NL MVP right now. That's like Tiger Woods-esque, where they just said, like, you can literally bet anybody you want the field at plus 400 or bet, Tiger Woods here. So that's how big of a favorite Acuna is to win the MVP right now. So
that's wild.
Dalvin Cook, right quick. Minnesota could have got this deal done if he signed for 8.6. Minnesota could have got this deal done. It leads me even more to believe that Minnesota is going to, as soon as Minnesota starts losing this season, they're going to go into tank mode.
I mean, they might. When you look at what they won last year, the wins on paper look fine, but how many close games and fourth quarter, 2 minutes wins they did? They're not going to do that this year.
10 wins by 8 points or less last year. Of their 13 wins was by 8 points or less.
Yeah, they need defense, right? They need to address the defensive side of the football. Offensively, they're great. I think Kirk Cousins is in for a good year. The way they want to throw the football, I like Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson. No problems on the offensive side of the football. It's all the other way, which is good for fantasy, because that means the offense is going to be forced to score and throw a lot. So
that was today's edition of A Bettor Morning. Thank you to Corey, Britt, and Jon. Make sure you check out Lightning Round Fantasy Football with Kevin Tompkins, Britt Flynn, and Coop at 1 p.m. Eastern. And if you missed any of our shows, you can find them all on our YouTube channels and at bettorsports.com. We wish everyone a better day. Thank you, everyone.